Okay, if I can now ask for absolute silence, that 2 minute warning is up. Thank you very much. Um, we're all seated, lots to talk about on a Monday morning. Let me start by saying this. I sort of remember the story very vividly of two people out in the Cape. They were fishermen and looking for a job and absolutely battling to get a job. So being the Cape, the Afrikaans vernacular would be what they would talk about, like, hey, ek soek 'n job, man. And like the other guy's like, but there is no job, daar's nie job nie. But ek soek 'n job. And this has been going on like for about a year. Ek soek 'n job. And there's just no job coming. And then one of them said, if there's no job, let's just start a business. But like, how do we start the business when there is no job and now we're going to be this big employers? But another 6 months went by and still no job, and they realized they needed to do something by themselves. So they were all fishermen. So what business do we start? No, let's do visvang. So let's get into the fish business. Okay, and they both agreed that's what we're going to do. Thereafter, their single biggest problem they had once they decided to start with no equity, but the fact that they had the knowledge to fish was as a name, and they had this debate for a while, like, what do we call ourselves? And that took a few weeks of battling about, like, we don't know. And then they said, forget about going to some experts who can give us some advice about a name. It's just me and you, isn't it? Let's just call it INJ. So I understand from that's how INJ started, of two people getting together and grew an empire. Okay, maybe it's an urban legend, maybe I'm talking nonsense, I don't know, okay? But it's just a good morning Monday story. What is not urban legend, what is fact, is this: that South Africa has a massive population. What is not urban legend is that we have massive unemployment. That's not urban legend. What's not urban legend is the unemployment is prevalent among skilled and unskilled people, especially as we move it to the end of the year and a whole lot of graduates, graduate. What is not urban legend is they're going to battle. They may have to do another INJ, and that's a huge problem. What's not urban legend is that in the last couple of days we've sunk into junk status. And what's not urban legend is that if we continue saying, well, sorry for ourselves, and not doing the INJ factor, we're going to have a problem, because it's pretty obvious from all those things I've said. No job means no personal wealth, means dependent on somebody else, means no wealth creation, means no intergenerational wealth, means that you don't pay taxes, means government doesn't have the money to without your taxes in this case here, doesn't have the money to try and ensure that the services that the citizens of our country, 50 million plus people, are provided for, and that vicious cycle continues. And what's not urban legend is we can't just talk about what government's going to do about it. Because the fact is, government belongs to South Africa, business belongs to South Africa, and South African people belong to South Africa. So why would we ever think that it's a responsibility just to one of those three? It's something that we all need to come together, put our heads together, and basically, make a plan. Indeed, as the INJ guys certainly did. And I think it's pretty obvious. I was told this a while back, that if your unemployment is massive and you are employed, then you can't say, well, I'm okay. Because we all want prosperity, don't we? We want prosperity and the best way to get prosperity is for the entire country. Because there are other issues like social ills and violence and crime that is part of the many unemployed that will impact on your prosperity, never mind what fancy, cushy job you have. So what I'm saying is this: no matter how selfish you may want to be, it is in your selfish interest that even though you have this great cushy job, you make sure that massive amount of other people in the country will find employment, because that will give you a sense of safety and security. It's an absolute link that we cannot do without. So my name is Ashraf Garda, and that's why we are here, and that's why I'm here, and you're here. In fact, let me put it this way. Monday is a particularly awkward time to have meetings, especially for business people to come out here. So which one of you sort of wishes you were not here? I'm just trying to check here. Because you have options, you know that we all have options. Which one of you, okay, there's no one. Let me try this again. Which one of you had other options, and in spite of those options, when you were invited to attend, told yourselves, there's nowhere else I want to be than at this launch of the Jobs Summit. This is where I want to be. Which one of you falls into that category? Pick up your hands if that's you. Some of you deciding, I'm very clear, I think 90% are saying, great. Well, I think you made a good decision, okay? So applause to you. Absolutely. So let me therefore greet you this morning, and I'm not going to run through all the different languages because we want to get to the issues of the Jobs Summit directly, excepting to say that I'm delighted to see you, you're delighted, I'm sure to be here, and you should be delighted because you're part of an energizer, and that's particularly what this is, right? Now, before we move on, which one of you has got smartphones here, cell phones, smartphones? Just check them. So what you're going to do about it? My suggestion before we get moving is the chances of each one of us being in the same auditorium ever again, every one of us together, is like probably 1 billion to 1. So before we get cracking, can you take some pictures with the people seated with you, alongside you, next to you? Do that. It's important. You need to take the pictures. And it's not just for lighties. Some people say, that's for young. No. If we want to be creative in the world, we need to send a message out. Take some pictures. We really have to. Take some pictures with all you people. And you're going to post it. All right? So can you do that now? I'm going to pause. I'm not going to move on until you do that. I'm like chilling here. You may just get some mobile companies giving jobs after that. Yeah. All right. People are battling, but it's fine. Those that can do it well have a job, which we know. All right. What I want you to do now is to post. Can you post that picture, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter and other forms of social media, and look for the Jobs Summit, 2 S's, right? And use hashtag Jobs Summit. Can you do that? Hashtag Jobs Summit. Who's going to do it? Pick up your hands. I want to know. Jobs Summit. Okay, great stuff. Okay, thank you for that. Do that. And can you do this throughout the morning? I need you to amplify this message, because the message is not about you and where you're sitting. It's a message around jobs. So can you amplify that? And when you post this picture, can you say, we are here? Can you guys do that? We are here. Just post to Job Summit, hashtag Job Summit, we are here. I'm going to check it out, okay? I'm going to retweet it if I find it to hashtag Job Summit, and I will retweet that. So we are here. Okay, there's some more fun here. I'm part of a movement called Champion South Africa, and that's why it's so important that I want to be here, because we are committed to identifying champions, promoting champions, and using them to create more champions. And the core of what we do is champion people build champion nations. So we know we've moved from junk status, but we want to move to a champion nation. And we need to get our skills, jobs, wealth, and the intergenerational wealth that we talk about all done. So what I'm going to ask you to do now, I'm going to ask each one of you to stand. Can you all stand? This is Monday morning. Can each one of you stand, please? Right? I want each one of you to stand, including the guys from the C-suite here right in front. Each one of you stand. Now, I want you to provide the energy this country definitely needs. It may be symbolic, but it's really important. So we're gonna applaud, not like, I'm happy to be here. We're gonna clap for a full 1 minute. You got that? 1 minute. Full applause, and we're gonna make a noise. Those of you that want to imitate, whatever you want to do, make a noise. 1 minute. You ready for that? All right, let's go. 1 minute. Woo! That's the way. Woo! Okay, there we are. Thank you, thank you. I hope you guys took some video clips of that. And stay with that energy, because I think this is the point. For the rest of the morning and the rest of the remainder of this year, think about the symbolism of one hand supporting each other. Have you got that? The energy was only created by that. Without that, there was no energy. Think about that when you go back home. It's really important. Okay, let's get into the business of why we really are here around the issues of job creation. We've got a range of speakers. We'll have some video clips played about what exactly the Job Summit is all about. But first things first, I wish to call upon the Deputy Director from the Office of the Deputy President, Nolu Babalo Ntwelwa Igwe. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. This is a message from the Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa. Executive Director of Ubuntu Initiative, Mr. Stefan Lober, development partners from business, labor, civil society, and government, fellow South Africans. Thank you for inviting me to attend the launch of this welcome and vital job summit. Please accept my apology for being unable to attend owing to a standing prior commitment. Please accept as well my good wishes and those of government for a successful launch and outcomes that will unlock opportunities and restore dignity for many South Africans. I have no doubt that the outstanding work you have been doing behind the scenes to create 100,000 jobs in 2018 will rekindle hope and inspire our nation to remain seized with finding sustainable solutions to unemployment. For a year now, the Ubuntu Initiative has spearheaded bold efforts in 20 industries to create employment and build skills. We applaud the South African private sector for its patriotic commitment to the inclusive future envisioned in our Constitution and the National Development Plan. The Ubuntu Initiative demonstrates that when business works together for a better future for all South Africans, we can indeed push back poverty, unemployment, and inequality. This job summit is a silver lining to the cloudy narrative of an economy that currently offers little hope to millions of vulnerable, unemployed South Africans. We welcome this summit because you refuse to accept that our national business card should define us as junk. You are laying the foundation for our economic recovery and shared growth. You are inspiring new ways for us to rise above stagnation, greed, crime, and social exclusion. We pay tribute to you for adding deed to dialogue and for focusing on what is possible even in times of difficulty. We look forward to the sustained growth of this initiative, whose core commodities are hope and human fulfillment. Stats SA tells us that poverty is rising among our people. Young people in particular are disproportionately affected by growing poverty and unemployment. To sustainably raise employment, we need more inclusive growth. We need to change the structure of the economy to encourage more startups and more competition, to encourage more regional trade and better integration into global value chains. Greater competition and market entry for new enterprises has been bolstered by strengthening the Competition Act and by giving the Commission the power to investigate anti-competitive conduct. We are working to reduce red tape through the Invest SA initiative and the Ease of Doing Business project in 9 of our largest municipalities. We have been working with social partners to reduce the risk of prolonged violent strikes. Thanks to the commitment of social partners, including business, the principle of a national minimum wage have been agreed. We are also working tirelessly to ensure that it is introduced by 1st of May 2018. Government and business have agreed to set up a youth employment service to provide internship for 1 million young people over 3 years to gain work experience. As part of improving the skills of workers, the post-schooling sector is focused on increasing the number of learnership and apprenticeship alongside increasing access to TVET colleges. We are working to create an environment that encourages investment in areas of economic activity that have the greatest impact on job creation. The elective conference of the African National Congress next month promises to deliver a new era of unity, stability, and greater policy certainty to boost investors and consumer confidence in our economy. Change in our country depends on the impact of initiatives such as this Job Summit. Your programs and experience must be shared in all our provinces. And we invite the private sector to devise even more bold initiatives to support rural development. The implementation of your plan in 2018 coincides with the celebration of the centenary of our founding president, Nelson Mandela. Your initiative is indeed a fitting tribute to our great leader. As you meet, may you draw inspiration from his words. And I quote, "Overcoming poverty is not a task of charity. It is an act of justice, like slavery and apartheid. Poverty is not natural. It is man-made, and it can overcome and eradicated by the actions of human beings." Close quote. This summit demonstrates that it is in our hands to usher in a new dawn of hope and a new era of job creation in 2018. Well done, and I wish you all the best. I thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that. Let's get some more applause, setting the scene here at the Job Summit. By the way, anybody knows, I mean, there's a South African who had a job like yesterday, and now has got a bigger job, like had a South African job, and now has got like a global job. Anybody knows who that person is? Oh, somebody knows their news. Miss Universe, we have a South African who's a Miss Universe as of a few hours ago. Okay? Absolutely fantastic. Demi Lee Nell Peters, full name there. So that's just one way of just amplifying what we do. Okay, let's move on then. So I first met Bonang Mohale when I had the privilege of interviewing on my SAFM radio shows, and immediately it's like, this guy's got energy. I think I probably told him, Bonang, you need to come home and spend some time with my children so they make the right decisions when they serve the country. That invitation hasn't been formally sent out, so he hasn't yet had the chance to say yes. But I've been struck by his energy and his consistency and his commitment to South Africa for a number of years. So with that in mind, without going through his CV and where he was and talking about Shell and all that, I won't go into all that, accepting that his current role as the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa puts him in a strategically critical position of inspiring business to create growth and jobs, and also putting pressure on government on the one hand to make the right decisions to provide the type of environment that CEOs and other big business people here can create the jobs, make the jobs, and actually give off those jobs. So put your hands together then for Bonang Mohale, the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. Let's see.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, what an amazing privilege it is for me so early on Monday morning when most of us are babalast, that you could wake up so early just so that we can have this conversation. After listening to my dear sister's intro representing our Deputy President, surely the question has to be like Lenin posed so many years ago. So what is to be done? Now that we have had our second downgrade below investment grade, normally referred to as junk status. Of the 23 countries that have ever been downgraded in the last 17 years, a majority of them, on average, take about 7 years to recover. Only South Korea did it in 2 years. They did that by dropping everything, ensuring that everybody puts their shoulder to the wheel. They worked like their whole life depends on it. And only in 2 years they came out of this self-perpetuating vicious cycle of abject poverty. Almost all of these countries never had just a single downgrade. A number of them had multiple downgrades. So we waited with bated breath on Friday, the 24th of November, knowing that when we listened to the medium-term budget policy statement, the downgrade moved from probable to certain. We have another 3 months by Moody's to see whether by our actions, abilities and capabilities to implement, whether we can demonstrate that we are indeed on a forwards and upwards trajectory. So let me share a few thoughts about what I think ought to be done, go back and say, but why are we where we are today and why? And then I will leave you so that for the rest of the day, collectively we can think about how we can get out of this morass where willfully, purposefully, deliberately we have been plunged into. This is the job summit. Governments are very good at standing at mountaintops and announcing that they're going to create jobs. So did our government, if some of you remember, that they wanted to introduce 6 million jobs. There's no way in the world that governments create jobs. Jobs are created by business. Everywhere else in the world. In this country, there's about 15 million people that are gainfully employed. 13.5 million of them are employed by business. Only 2.2 million are employed by government. Bloated as it is, but that's it. There is nowhere else in the world where governments have gone through the trauma that as a people with great natural endowments we have gone through without some sort of a Germany's Marshall Plan or the US of A's, the New Deal during D. Roosevelt's era immediately after the Great Depression. We also had our own Marshall Plan in the form of the Reconstruction and Development Program that unfortunately we didn't give any time for it to take traction. 3 years later, we came up with another economic plan called the Growth, Employment and Redistribution Strategy. The beauty about the RDP is that it was supported by business, by government, by labor, and civil society, therefore by all the social partners. That was the magic. Now in hindsight, we know that South Africa's problems have nothing to do with our availability of resources, but everything to do with the fact that we are just refusing to manage. Plan, lead, coordinate, and organize. Our execution is non-existent at best. Where there is some, it is half-hearted, very short indeed, and then we abandon it. Since then, we've had an alphabet soup of economic plans, followed quickly by Asgiza and God knows what else. And recently, just in the last 3 months, we've had the 4-point, then the 9-point, now the 14-point plan. If there was an Olympic sport about developing plans, I think we'd win it hands down. It was General George Patton who said great wars are won by good execution, not by good plans, because great execution will save even a mediocre plan. So what is to be done? Let me proffer a few practical, simple things that we can do to make sure that we get ourselves out of this hole. Imagine for a moment if all we did was to stop and therefore totally eliminate the irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure that the Auditor General tells us in the last 10 years we are burning on average about 80 billion rands a year every year. Would add into our fiscus 80 billion rand. The medium-term budget policy statement said that we have a deficit. This gap between revenue and expenditure of 51 billion. So we are in a hole. This is threatening to go towards 4 percentage points. In that environment, our president is conniving to take the credit to give free education to the indigent. By 2012's calculation, we said free education just to the poor, higher education to the poor, will add another 50 billion. So that's 100. Add to that this dream whose only intent can only be corruption of a nuclear deal that is ill-conceived, not needed, and unaffordable, where the only accomplishment will be to indebt our great-grandchildren. Imagine if we scrapped the nuclear deal. That's 1 trillion South African rand. But if we were to reduce the public expenditure just by 10%, we could add another 100 billion to the fiscus. If we gave the public sector wage negotiations, CPI, not the demanded 7.1 to 7.3, just CPI, will add another 60 billion to the fiscus. If we did not refund to the employers, people like us, my 80 strong CEOs of major companies and multinationals listed on the JSE, and we reduced that refund of learnerships and internships by the SETAs, just by 1%, will add another 40 billion. So imagine if we're serious about improving the quality of lives of the majority of our people, and we took heed of what the 3 rating agencies said at the time that we went to Davos, and we worked for 15 solid months with this government and labor and civil society to avoid a ratings downgrade in that December. And they raised only 5 things. And we did only that. Where would we be as a people with great natural endowments? So one of the solutions we'd want to proffer is all the state-owned enterprises that have been demonstrated beyond any shadow of doubt that they are state-captured. Their boards and executives are indeed state-captured. If we fired the whole lot, the board, the chairpersons, and the executives, imagine where it would be, because share price is driven by rumor and speculation. When you increase both business and consumer confidence, that's what increases foreign direct investment. So we don't need an independent judicial commission of inquiry as suggested by the former public protector Thuli Madonsela, an amazing, good quality human being, a warrior that just lifted that office. Because what has come out of the parliamentary hearings around the state capture of Eskom alone is enough to put a lot of people in jail. So for the first time in the history of this 23-year-old democracy, the chairman of Eskom, Ntate Zola Tsotsi, directly links the president of the country to the capture of Eskom. Directly. This wasn't by innuendo, it was direct. Imagine for a moment if we provided regulatory certainty and policy stability. Because that's what the rating agencies needed. They said the problem is your political economy. The problem is growth. The problem is the governance of state-owned enterprises. Because for the last 10 years, we've been growing at an average of 3.5% GDP growth I'm talking about. For the last 6 years, we're not even touching 2 percentage points, which means we are unable to absorb the 180,000 young graduates that get onto the job market, often with inappropriate skills. The rating agencies ask for policy certainty and stability. What do they get? 12 cabinet reshuffles in 8 years. 6 national commissioners of police. 10 CEOs at Eskom. Almost as many at South African Airways. So we are where we are, not because we belong to the emerging market or part of BRICS, and therefore the emerging markets or the BRICS are falling out of favor. In fact, all of those are growing. We are the only ones that are not growing. We are where we are, not because the world is in a global recession. No. In fact, the world is doing very well, thank you. We are where we are by choice. This is deliberate, it's purposeful, it's conscious. This is what hurts the most. Because this is not just an own goal. This is not just self-inflicted. It's like cutting one's nose to spite one's face. In exactly the same way that we missed the commodities boom because Richard Bay terminals could not transport the coal quick enough to China, and China ended up finding an alternative in Mexico. By that action and that action alone, we fell from being the top 5 coal producers in the world out of the top 5. The same way that we're the number 1 gold producing country in the world at 100,000 tons per annum. Now we produce 35 tons. We're not even in the top 10. It hurts, painfully so. Especially because 30% of all the minerals that the world needs is here in Africa. 70% of the diamonds are here. And yet the poorest people in the world are part of this 1.2 billion people in 54 countries that speak 2,000 languages with a continental GDP of 170 trillion US dollars. South Africa's portion of that being 350 billion US dollars. Translated to rands, we can safely say that we are a 4 trillion South African rands economy. So why are we where we are now? Let me start with the medium-term budget policy statement. That saw the new Minister of Finance announcing for the first time, with warts and all, in his own words, he said there will be no sugar coating, and there was no sugar coating. The problem was he told us the problems, and not once did he give even a single solution. And as a result, within 2 hours, the rent lost 4%. At the end of that day, 6.9%. And since then, we've been freewheeling downhill. He said 3 things that demonstrates beyond any shadow of doubt that South Africa has now reached the fiscal cliff. Number 1, he says that our revenue is decreasing as a result of rapidly deteriorating tax morality. Of course, you'll expect the morality to deteriorate when hard-working South Africans pay their taxes, and we are told that on average every year, 100 billion is siphoned off through state capture, just to the 2 families, the Zuma and the Gupta family. Secondly, he said that our debt is increasing. So Mandela's regime and Thabo Mbeki's regime was very prudent. They kept our debt to GDP ratio below 20 percentage points. With this administration, we have taken it to 50, excluding the guarantees to state-owned enterprises. If we include those, it goes to 60. And he told us that is going to 70. If you include, it's going to 70. That in and of itself is not such a big problem until you look at the last number. The cost of servicing this debt is now going towards 15%. At 15%, it's exactly the same in rand terms as our entire education budget, just to servicing debt. To conclude, corruption is bad, very bad, because it robs the poor of the poorest. It affects them disproportionately. The price of milk, bread, and mealie meal goes up. And those of us that have debt, we know that it adds more to a point where we can't afford. But by definition, corruption is linear, it's binary, it's transactional, it's opportunistic. What we're dealing with here is state capture. And this has been a project that is more than 10 years old. We know because we can see how it manifests. Without any degree of granularity, therefore not unpacking it, we have witnessed how the state-owned enterprises have been repurposed to benefit only these 2 families. Unlike learning from what apartheid did, the state-owned enterprises were used to skill the Afrikaners. Transnet produced millwrights, artisans, lift mechanics. With us, we have used them as our turn to eat too. The second thing is the entrenching of parallel but weak governance, because state capture does not thrive where there's good governance, because where there's good governance, there's final accountability. People can spell this notion of stewardship and probity, the duty of care, skill, diligence, and faith. Thirdly, it's a creation of a shadow state where cabinet is no longer the center of power, but we create parallel structures. And we saw this demonstrated beyond any shadow of doubt with the Minister of Finance coming in with 20 cohorts when the entire full-time employees of Pravin Gordon's National Treasury was just 9. Interministerial committees, decisions are made there, not where we can hold people finally accountable. One such minister even lied and said, I chair one such, and where cabinet has decided to institute a commission of inquiry into why the 4 banks closed the Gupta accounts when he was lying. The fourth is how you legitimize rent seeking. This triple PFA, triple BEE, where this notion of prepaying black companies because they have cash flow problems, you use that to give 600 million to Optimum Coal, a private company owned by the Guptas. And Eskom, at the time that is at its most borrowed, 350 billion, decides to give a guarantee to another Gupta-owned company called Tegeta, 1.6 billion, to buy another private company called Optimum Coal. Lastly, the final prize, always, is they are not happy now to drink out of the tap. They want to drink from the fire hose. Because with 3 weeks left before the conference, 16th to the 20th of December, the ultimate prize was always the National Treasury for 2 reasons. One, because this last financial year, this amazing institution that is absolutely world-class, not now, collected 1.14 trillion South African rands. So if you do the math and you divide by 55 million South Africans, there is absolutely no reason why any of us should be poor. Secondly, because the Deputy Minister of Finance, by definition, is the chairman of the biggest asset manager in the country, the PIC, 1.9 trillion. It's been a wonderful opportunity to chat to you this morning. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
As you may see, Bonang is already running away. He's got a job to do. So applause for him. Thank you. He has said many, many things, and may I urge you, for those that haven't made notes, there are many people who are tweeting #JobSummit. If you follow that thread, particularly on Twitter, you will find verbatim the content of his speech. And there's some real gems, important gems here that emerge. Because on the one hand, there's this apocalypse now scenario, and yet you actually have genuine hope from a person who leads business in South Africa. And I think it's that sort of hope that we need to follow and to emulate. Some of the points he made about, well, it was very clear. Make a plan's out. So mark a plan, like I have a good plan. Just throw that out. It's not going to work. We just have too many plans. That 3 trillion rands that he spoke about and what that means, I'll leave it for you to think about. The issues of our SOEs being state captured. And I thought this was really interesting. He's suggesting you should fire the boards of state-owned enterprises. That means effectively saying, turn them from employed into unemployed as a vehicle to create employment. It's a wonderful paradox, but certainly works for me. And the other one is, we are here where we are as a country by choice. It's something to reflect on. When we won the hearts of the world in 1994, we were there by choice. At a time when, as we're well aware of, many countries in the world that comes to mind, the issues of Rwanda and then Yugoslavia went into absolute turmoil. We were where we were in 1994 by choice. We are here also by choice. What we do next should also be by choice. And that point about 16% cost of service debt equals the education budget. Well, I don't need to say more. And then his final point, amongst many, cabinet is no longer the center of power. Without getting into the political issues, what it does mean, there's this massive responsibility on all of you. There are some people tweeting, by the way, and this is the essence of their tweet. Where are the young people here at the Job Summit? Where are the unemployed at the Job Summit? I can't answer that. I'm not part of those that employ. But I'm sure you will take what they're saying very, very seriously. Because they want, the unemployed, they want a seat at the table. They want a seat at the table. At this point, they don't have a seat at the table. Let me bring you on to the next speaker then. So, many may know, just by the way, I went for the Muslim pilgrimage to Mecca a few months ago, the Hajj. And when we were done on the last day, the Imam asked everybody, like, so what a great place. Who wants to stay here forever? And like half of them, yeah, we want to stay here. Just great place. And then, of course, he asked me, he's like, so Ashraf, do you also want to stick around here like everybody else? I said, no. He said, why? Are you homesick? I said, no, actually, I've had a wonderful 6 weeks, because I was away for 6 weeks. I've never been out of the country that long. I said, I've had a wonderful 6 weeks. So he said, why do you want to go home? Why are you in a hurry to go home? I said, well, I've been inspired by what I've seen and heard, and inspired by the social justice principles that I've seen on display, and the willingness for human beings to help other people. And I'm in a hurry to go home because I have a country to build. It's very emphatic. I have a country to build. My responsibility is my country, my South Africa. Stefan Laubers from Europe, he came to South Africa, I don't know when, Stefan, maybe 20-odd years ago. And when he asked me, he said, Ashraf, I need you to MC or program direct this event, my mind went back to, I have a country to build. And Stefan's done many things, from his work at Ifundi to the Ubuntu Initiative, and now the executive director of the Jobs Summit. But it's interesting, here's a man from Europe who's been here for a long time, and he's here today inspiring all of us, and it really doesn't matter where the inspiration comes from, because Stefan has a country to build. Thank you.
Thank you. How do you create jobs? I'm not claiming that this list is exhaustive, but I see there is about 7 major areas where you can intervene. We have heard a lot from Bonang how our macroeconomic government policies are not really working. When we talk to employers, they often blame our tight labor laws. The regulatory environment maybe could be improved. We heard from Bonang how Richards Bay became a bottleneck that stopped economic growth. So if you invest into infrastructure, it creates jobs while you build the infrastructure, but it also lubricates all of the economic activity. Bonang also talked about direct investments, attracting foreign investments to South Africa. But you may have heard South African business is sitting on 3 trillion rands that it's not spending. Money, if invested, would create jobs. Now, if you ask me, the points 1 to 3 are very much in the court of government, organized business, and the unions, let's call them the social partners, who have to improve. And I think the statement that Bonang makes, and I'm quite sure Dennis George from the labor movement is going to go down a similar road, is to create that political pressure that will help us improve in that regard. Then, every business, at the end of the day, has to be successful by itself. If a business is not competitive, it doesn't matter what government does, it's not going to succeed. But the automotive sector in South Africa has also beautifully shown that if different enterprises organize themselves, they're much more powerful than if they bet on their own. So that is 1 to 5. But when we started the Job Summit, our belief was there is not much we can influence on those factors. But through my work at Ifundi, where we have been doing learnership since 2002, we have seen a common problem. Companies are reluctant to give young people an opportunity because they consider that a risk. So how do we get companies to open their doors? Companies wouldn't like to have people coming in their business if they're not skilled. So the question is, how do we give work experience and how do we give people the necessary skills? We also know, also through the BE codes, that enterprise development and supplier development are great opportunities. At the end of the day, in many industries, they are dominated by small employers. So we have concentrated in terms of our initiative on those later 2 points, 6 and 7. So what is the Job Summit? Firstly, it's a platform, literally a platform like this stage, where different organizations can come together, showcase what they're doing, to build the necessary momentum to change the situation. We have gone, and you saw a video earlier on from the wholesale and retail sector, is let us work not as individual companies, but let us work together as industries to find a common solution. And it was, for me, one of the very first workshops we had was with the retail sector, and I was amazed how much people who are fiercely competitive normally were willing to put their best practices on a table, to show how things can be done better, to start to think not as an individual company, but how can we find a solution collectively. And also, if you want to have a different results than what you had yesterday, you need to find new ways of doing it. So our 3 keywords that came from that workshop are, let's share our knowledge, let's work together as an industry, and let's not do business as usual. Let's come up with new solutions. So we have organized 20 industries, and these industries are either strategically important, like mining has been losing jobs for many years, but it's still a vital employer, or sectors that are emerging, such like the business process outsourcing sector that has been on a growth trajectory for a long time. The idea was, when we bring those industries together, we ask everybody, how can you create 5,000 jobs? So if you multiply 5,000 times 20, you get 100,000 jobs. And in the process, we have interacted with close to 200 organizations during the last year. Our approach is on 3 levels. The first thing is, let's get industry on board. Industry associations play a very vital role. Sunil from the IT Association will talk later how they are getting involved. Because the strength of an industry association is it has all its employers on board. The second thing is leadership involvement. Changing jobs means creating jobs means doing things differently. And there will be no change if change is not led from the top down. And therefore, as we go further into the year, we're going to create a CEO council. CEOs who are committed to make a change in their industry, CEOs who will challenge other companies to join. For me personally, I see Chris there, was the CEO sleep out 2 years ago, where we were braving one of the coldest nights in a year. And when I was there and I looked at all the CEOs, I said to myself, wow, these people are committed. Often the assumption is that big business leaders do not care about the people. But I don't think it's true. My personal experience that evening was, actually our leaders do personally care. And then I asked myself, how can we take that energy, that positivity, and how can we take the leaders of these businesses to help us create jobs? I think that was really the origins of the concept of the Job Summit. And lastly, put people's people in the center. What is a people's people? It's the HR people, it's the training guys, it's the transformation guys. For the last 15 years at least, I have been talking to countless organizations. And the story always goes like this. I meet the training guys, I meet the HR guys, the BE guys. And it's like a family gathering. We're all on the same page. Some families, not all, okay? And then, next question is, we have to go, or my colleagues from within those companies have to take the ideas to their ops people, because at the end of the day, they are going to give work to the people. The ops manager says, very nice idea, I like what you do, but we're just busy right now, it's peak season, and please, I can't take any chances, any risk. If we pass that hurdle, then we need money to do something. So you go to the finance secretary or CFO, and he says, very nice, I like what you do, but just we don't have budget. Let's imagine we find the budget, and then we go to the CEO, or they go to the CEO, we're not seeing the CEO, and the CEO says, please go back to HR. Or putting it differently, when we started about a year ago these initiatives, we sent letters to all the CEOs, and the answer was, here, I'm sending my HR manager. Now, my experience, I can say in a very long time in my career, is HR people are on the periphery. I call them orphans in an organization. Okay? Right? I remember when I was in one of my first consulting projects, I was involved in writing the HR policies for one of the leading South African companies. And to my surprise, we did not report to the HR manager. We reported to the CFO. So what I want to say is, if you want to create jobs, please put the people's people in the center of your organization. Okay? So a function like this today, and a round table is very much designed to keep that in mind. So that we have the people who actually do your work, developing people, creating jobs, sitting with the leadership of the organizations. So these are the three things. Let's get industry involved. Now, once we have the industry involved, let's get the leadership of those companies involved, and then let's help the people who do the work to have the necessary influence. So that's our approach for the Job Summit. As I said, we engaged with 20 industries. Today, we're showcasing 4 sectors. One of the people that I was at evening on the CEO sleep out with was the Premier of Gauteng. And when we had that idea about the Job Summit, the first person I went to was Dennis George. I know him for quite a while. And I put my case in front of him, and he says, Stefan, let's go and meet the Premier. So we met the Premier, and the Premier says, I'll support you under one condition. This must be not another talk shop. Putting it differently, how many conferences have you attended in your life? And often, I would say most of the time, they're excellent. What happens afterwards? Great ideas are floated, and when we go in the parking lot, these ideas are left behind, and we are gone, and nothing happens. So when the Premier asked, no more talk shop, we started to think seriously. How are we going to avoid that? And we took our inspiration from the Paris Climate Accord. Years before that event, the people had discussion, planning, and preparation. They had the event, they launched it, they ironed out differences, and now we're in a stage where we're implementing. So pre, at, post, that has been our approach. What are some of the themes that we have learned from engaging? First of all, although we have millions of unemployed people, there are plenty of jobs. You heard it correctly. There are plenty of jobs. People, however, companies, however, need people right now. So if somebody leaves the company, you have a vacancy, you want to fill that vacancy ASAP. However, when you bring an inexperienced person, it takes time for that person to be built up. So therefore, companies are reactive and do not allow enough lead time to bring in new talent. However, there are plenty of initiatives in, I would say, almost all organizations that do actually work, such as work readiness programs, internships, learnerships, apprenticeships. They do not always exactly work out as you wish, but if properly implemented, they do work. So in other words, there is no magic, there is no mystery. We do have the solution. And those solutions are already in your companies. So scale them up. I think scaling up is a key word. Great work done by a lot of companies. We just need to do much more of the same. The industries, in many cases, and you saw here in the retail sector, where the retail sector says, let us come together as employer and create a ready-made pool of people. You will see the same idea coming back in the security sector. So in other words, let's prepare the people so when we're ready to recruit, we have the people ready to go. The next one is, when you talk to employers, they all say, oh, these youth, they don't make them like they made us. Okay? Don't know how they made you. Okay? Or they call them the millennials. I personally don't believe in that concept. Millennials probably, hopefully, are not the same as me, because a lot of time has passed since I was born. So society evolves, people also evolve. Our youth also evolves. I think, in my personal opinion, it's a lack of exposure. People do not know, young people have no good understanding of the world of work. So let us help young people to understand how it really happens, how life really happens. But also, I heard stories, people going and spending 4 years at university studying to become a journalist, and once they enter a newspaper, they realize that they actually don't like it. So there must be a much bigger link between the young people need to understand much better what the world of work looks like, and also where the growth is. Don't go and study journalism when the journalism industry is shrinking. Digitalization was another huge topic. I think sometimes people, when we talk to them in some of the industries, and we suggested to them, create 5,000 jobs, the guys freaked out. We cannot create jobs in our industry. I said, why not? Digitalization. The machines, the robots are going to take over. So I think then one of the banks asked me to write a paper on digitalization and its impact on our workforce. I applied my brain, and the conclusion was, what it takes to overcome unemployment is exactly the same thing that we need to do to deal with digitalization. Why? It's very simple. Digitalization is a move to higher skilled jobs. We have a massive population of people who are not trained, and if we want to create jobs, we need to uplift those people and prepare them for work. That's today. But the same thing is going to happen when digitalization you have. Doesn't matter who you are in a company, you need to upskill your people. Common question then is, IT industry says, but we don't need entry-level people. We need senior people. So the question then is, how do we bring people in on an entry level, and how do we progress them within a company? Simple answer, good HR. Not reactive HR, not reactive HR that only has to deal with compliance issues, but good HR that is focused on talent development. And lastly, supplier development, small business development. Many times people ask me, don't you think, Stefan, we need more entrepreneurship? And I have two answers. One, I look at myself as an entrepreneur and I say, it's damn hard to run your own business, okay? So you take a young person and say, go and run your own business. Is that really going to work so magic? But yes, we must send out the message of entrepreneurship, especially when we go in a new economy, which is called the gig economy, which basically means everybody fend for themselves because you may not have a job and you're going to be probably a contractor. Okay? So, but every industry has unique opportunities to help people to go forward. Lastly, not another talk shop. Okay? So how did we achieve that? I mentioned it earlier. We started late last year forming industry task teams. We have been engaging through most of the year with those different industry developing plans. Today is our launch. Now the important thing is the arrow. After today, the real work starts. We need to implement those initiatives that we discussed. We need to monitor them, and otherwise it was another talk shop. But we have put proper project management structures in place. We have also developed an online platform to help companies to reduce their workload. And then 1 year later, next year, we hopefully will come together again here and then celebrate. We see which companies, which industries have succeeded and celebrate and reward them. So that's the way forward. And then it becomes an ongoing cycle of events. Now, I ask myself, how do we create jobs? Okay, obviously, that has been underlying there. But having talked to 200 companies, I ask myself, what can we do? What's this problem? And it reminds me of experience you probably had this morning. Some of you were early, but normally when you drive into Sandton in the morning, it's a totally frustrating situation. And it doesn't matter how desperate you are to get to work, you can't jump the queue. It's slow. In simple English, you can't do nothing about the traffic. Isn't that a little bit about unemployment the same? What can you do about the junk status, about the 15-point plan and state capture? Can you do anything about that? Maybe you can vote in 4 years or a few years, okay? But not much more than that. So can you do anything about unemployment? To be frank with you, those of you who deal with those issues, and I see many of you who do that for a living, okay? But the average citizen, the average employee in a company really believes there is nothing I can do except complain. So in one of the workshops, they raised the topic, a word called, we need to create a coalition of the willing. What is a coalition of the willing? To be very frank, we have been here for a long time in this country, all of us. We know most of us are not that young anymore. What's going to change if you complain? Nothing. We hope government is going to change. We hope government is going to do things differently. It may or may not. So does it mean we give up? The coalition of the willing are people who say, I make it happen myself. I'm not going to wait for government. I'm not going to wait for nobody. And having interacted with 200 companies, going through countless switchboards and PAs, okay, I have learned one thing. It is about each one of us saying I can do it. So for example, I say complacency. Complacency means, the traffic is, I'm stuck in traffic, but I'll get there anyway. Maybe 10 minutes later, but it's going to be okay. So unemployment is there, 1 million last year more, next year another million. Life will go on. Business will go on as usual. I don't believe in that. I do believe if we don't do something rapidly, we're going to have a major, major social crisis. Some people have mentioned words like Arab Spring. When I talk to people, can you come to a meeting and attend a workshop to do planning? I would like to come, but I'm too busy with something else right now. Okay? Covey's language. Are you operating in the urgent sector or in the important sector? Don't blame, okay? Take ownership. Unemployment is your problem, okay? And another thing is, unemployed people suffering is also your suffering. We may enjoy a good breakfast today, but meanwhile, there are a lot of millions of unemployed people out there. So with that, I'm over. My call to you is very simple. Please do something in your own capacity. If you do something in your own capacity, the companies will follow. Thank you.
Well, like Bonang before that, Stefan's an impressive man in terms of getting his, operating in what the important sector, Stefan, quoting Stephen Covey, and not in just the urgent. So let's give him some applause once again. Thank you. And I'll just say a couple of things on the back of what he said that is really important here. He repeated this a few times, putting the people's people at the center of an organization, putting the people's people at the center of the organization. And also said we have plenty of unemployed, but we also have plenty of jobs. So it's an interesting, how do we connect that equation? And that issue of that very difficult word, digitalization, difficult words, and could be seen as a massive threat, but also a massive, massive opportunity. Because I was at the Demo Africa summit that I emceed on Friday, and key there was that people who are in the tech space, it's not literally you in the tech space. Tech is the enabler to get you to do what you were doing before in a far more inefficient way to turn that to a far more efficient way. So technology is the key enabler. And I thought your point about the millennials was interesting because some of the most significant businesses in the world today are run by very, very young people. So instead of actually suggesting that we should get the young people on board and maybe teach them a thing or two, well, I've said so publicly before, I'd be very happy to be mentored by a young 22-year-old or whatever, because there's just so much of what they're doing that's important, and perhaps we should be listening to them a lot more than we are listening right now. The issue of traffic and that job queue traffic, I think, is a wonderful analogy. And Stefan, as far as the coalition of the willing is concerned, Stefan, I'm very happy to be part of the coalition of the willing, okay? And I urge you, we may not have the answers, because Stefan's not saying sign up and guarantee 10,000 jobs. Nobody can do that. And that's not what you want. But I'm just suggesting I want to be, and I have no jobs to offer, but I have some influence. I want to be part of the coalition of the willing. Can I urge you to do the same? If that's the case, you're going to pick up your hands and join me? Coalition of the willing. Willing to make a plan. Never mind, Bonang says don't make too many plans. Do whatever we have to do to get to a position where we reduce unemployment and create employment. And I mean, part for me is in terms of what this coalition of the willing really means in simple terms, Stefan, is a phrase I use often, and I'll repeat it. Champion people build champion people. Champion people build champion people, and champion people build champion nations. You can go wherever you are in the world. It's not Table Mountain. It's not the wonderful blue seas that we have and all these things that other countries have. I think about Singapore was actually nothing. Champion people build champion nations. The question is, are we part of that group that says, I'll pick up my hand and I want to be part of that group that I'm a champion and I will build more champions? Because that's what champion people build champion people really is all about. We don't have much to go for. There's a little bit left to come before we get to breakfast. I made reference to the Demo Africa a few days ago, and it's relevant to our next guest. So these were young South Africans and young Africans, people from the African continent, besides South Africa, who were entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs, startups, looking to create businesses around technology. I can tell you now, I don't say things if I don't believe in it. I was so impressed. I was incredibly impressed by what they did, where they are, where they want to go. Every one of them has a global vision. So we have incredible talent in our country and in our continent. And they all are in the tech space. That's significant because my next speaker is Sunil Genes, who is the president of the ITA, which is the Information Technology Association of South Africa, also director of government relations at CSRI, as well as SAP Africa. Give some applause to Sunil Genes.
Guys, give yourselves a round of applause. Let's get our energy levels up again in this room. So this morning we heard from Bonang. You heard the dark story. Some of you went into depression. I was looking around the room. You're wondering why you're here. You all look good this morning. You took time to get up this morning, put on that tie, put on that beautiful dress, I must say, to get out here and to give us your time this morning. So somebody once told me that the difference between success and failure is the ability to act. Now, with that in mind, I have a little envelope for each of you. Please look on your tables. You're going to find a postcard on that table. I want you to put in your name. We don't need your mobile number, just your name, and tick a few boxes. And once you've done that, I want you to take a photograph of that and post that on Twitter. Post that on Twitter with your name saying, "We are here and I am committed to the Job Summit." I'll give you a few seconds to do that. And if you want to hashtag it, I am part of the solution. So we heard the story, we heard the kind of environment that we need to create. We've listened to the global context of the world. The world is doing well. I had the opportunity of being outside of the country over the last 2 weeks. I spoke to some students at the University of Zeppelin, which was out in Germany. And the kind of vibe I felt from the students made me wonder, with the kind of population that Germany has, what the potential is of South Africa. And I clearly believe that we, as a collective here today, with the youth of this country, can recreate the future of the country. We are standing at the precipice. Yes, we are standing at an economic cliff, but there is much more that we can do as a collective. And the private sector is the engine of growth in this country. Let's not forget that. It's been driving the country. You as individuals participating in that economy have been contributing to taxes and to jobs. Now, Stefan has been on a journey over the last 12 months. Can we give him a round of applause? Because we are here today because he took the time out to get us here. And during the course of those engagements, what has come out of these engagements is that we need to act. We've heard about the why, and now we want to talk about the how, because that's the acting part. What the meetings engaged came out with were the following: that firstly, CEOs should meet on a quarterly basis to make an assessment of where we are on this roadmap as a job summit. That the task force would meet on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, to put together various forms of on an operational level, and that we'll have a yearly job summit. The job summit should not be a talk shop. We need to put down our KPIs. We need to have in place the aspirational goal. And that goal of 100,000 was not thumbs up. It came as a result of your participation. You put your neck on the block and said, I will contribute, or we will contribute, or we as an industry will contribute to this 100,000. And, you know, Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, the president of Liberia, once said, your dreams need to be larger than your imagination. Otherwise, you'll never overachieve. So 100,000 may seem like a lot of jobs. I looked at some comments on EWN this morning, and I saw some people say, really, 100,000 jobs. Yes, really 100,000 jobs. That's the aspirational goal. Now, how can we work as an industry? Because the collective of the industry is much more important about individual companies. Part of our problem we've had is glamorization of job skills, of creation of job skills and creation of jobs for the purpose of publicity. That has to stop, because the whole idea of taking philanthropic efforts, driving brand value in a country, etc., is important for you and your shareholders. But does it really make a difference to the economy in which you are profiting from? That's a question we need to ask. So as the IT industry, what we've decided to do is to get together. The ITA has been in existence for more than 87 years. We have about 100 companies, the likes of multinationals, mid-range companies. We also have the smaller companies. And Ashraf spoke about digitization, so did Stefan. The IT industry is by far one of the most important industries in the world. The statistics would show that for every job created, almost 1.4 to about 3 new jobs are created in IT. At the moment in the world, India, in some cases, in other parts like in Rwanda, you see this development of this industry. And we have the ability here as the IT industry to create further jobs. Already, companies like Telkom have made announcements recently about an investment of about 250 million rand, plus minus, over 3 years. We have EOH, which is a local company which has gone global. They had their youth and job creation initiative, which some of you are part of. SAP, the company that pays my salary, also has something called Skills for Africa. These are job creation efforts. We have got to stop this nonsense of certifying people for the sake of certification. And that speaks to the future. The future will be created now. The jobs that are around today didn't exist in the past. A data scientist was not even in the dictionary a few years ago. So you in your daily jobs are participating, taking part in various industry forums. We would like to see industries work with academia, work with government, wherever you have the opportunity, be it on a national level, a provincial level, or a local level, and to aggregate your capabilities and your resources to deliver on this mandate of the jobs. Of course, what a job is, etc., is another story. We'll allow you to work out what a job is, whether it's 3 months, 2 months, whatever the case is. Everybody knows our hero, right? Next year will be 100 years since the birth of Mandela. What are you going to do to commemorate that legacy? Well, you've told us already, you're here. You're going to support it. Because it's a multiple of 100,000. And we have got to find the glue in this country, in this society, in this industry that you belong to deliver the value to the future of your children and children's children. If the millennials who take on 3 jobs in a year for a quarter at a time are bored, they will just leave here. Believe me. Many of your kids, your families, your relatives are planning to study outside of the country. Will we bring them back? I don't know. It depends on us. Yes, of course, we have the macroeconomics. We have government in terms of what it's doing. But I want you today to think about this future. Next year will be 2018. It's here on your doorstep. You have your jobs. You have your consistent salaries. You have your bonuses to look forward to. You are still in a job or you're still making money in this country. But there are a number of people in society who have never walked into an office. And as industries, this job creation and the job summit should be the paramount factor in which we look at. If we're not doing that, then it's a talk show. And let us all here, Stefan, you've got the register. I want that put up on social media, that everybody here committed to get behind. Of course, you cannot create a job on your own. I understand that because you have a family and you have things to take care of. But you can act. Let's say we are going to act. Come on, guys. Are we going to act? I don't hear you. Come on, guys. The breakfast is coming, of course. I'm going to be done in a minute. Are you going to act on the job summit? Yes. Thank you. Have you posted your picture online? Have you? I'm going to look out for that. And I want to thank you for your attention. I've only had 10 minutes to talk to you. I wish I could talk to you for a day. I'm sure you'd like to listen to me for a day, right? And I hope you leave here inspired. Thank you so much for supporting Stefan and the sponsors that have been out here, the partners that are here. Of course, I have my colleague who will talk from Fiducia in a short while, and you'll hear the labor perspective. But let's all get behind this. There'll be a tracking mechanism that Stefan and his team will put in place. You can go in there. You can establish your own targets that you put in place. There's no rope that's being put around your neck. All right? Thank you very much. Have a wonderful morning.
Well, there you are, certainly throwing down the gauntlet about what is the difference between success and failure is the ability to act. So applause once again to Sunil. And if nothing else, just saying we need to act. I think that has got to be taken home. By the way, that hashtag Jobs Summit, many people tweeting, and also, of course, the newsroom's doing the same. So please check it out, and you will find there's lots of things that maybe you've forgotten. It's a way of just making notes. It's there, okay? Check it out. Right. I'd now like to call upon Dennis George, who's the Secretary of Fiducia, the Federation of Unions of South Africa. Please give him some applause. Thank you. I will say this much. I've engaged with Dennis on many occasions. His son is an outstanding golfer. I hope you don't mind me saying that. So there's pressure on him. The bottom line is that's one job less we have to create, right? I think he's going to be okay. However, in terms of your position at Fiducia, it's an important role that you play from the union side. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Good morning. My wife accuses me that I don't work. She says to me that I go from place to place, I only talk. And so I talk on TV, I talk on radio, I talk to people. And she doesn't know that you can't just talk. You have to talk sense. Because if you're just going to talk, people are not going to ask you to come back. But Stefan, where are you? Stefan made a very, very important intervention in this sense that the critical thing is that you cannot have government to lead employment in South Africa. We need the private sector to do that. Number two, his approach is a sector approach. In other words, bring sector task teams together and let them set targets, okay? And that is very important. But part of my job was also to work with former Minister Pravin Gordhan. So when South Africa was downgraded the first time, you remember on the 9th of the 12th, we all were shocked when the president stood up and said, look, he has decided to move Minister Nene away from the Minister of Finance and position him to become the BRICS director for Southern Africa. You remember that? You know, when people lie through their teeth, you must be careful for them. And that is where our sort of downslide started to happen. Because my father taught me a lot about don't spend money that you don't have. Because, you know, this disease is, and I must be very careful now, Stefan, not to say something nasty about the women during the 16 days of non-violence against women. But this disease gets mostly women infected through the eyes. And you pick this disease up when you walk through the shopping center malls. You know, the disease is classified in a scientific name as must-have. You know, this thing of must-have. Now, I mean, I don't go with my wife to the shopping center malls anymore. Because, you know, we just end up having the biggest argument. Because she buys things that we don't actually need. So the whole issue why I'm telling you this story is we don't need a nuclear power station in South Africa. So why do we want to spend 1 trillion rand in debt, you and your children, to pay off large debts? I'm supposed to do the closing address, so I must pick up what every speaker has said and then try to summarize it. So my friend Bonang Mohali told us that when Jacob Zuma took over from Thabo Mbeki, our GDP ratio to debt was 20%. Under Jacob Zuma, it increased or ballooned to 55% of GDP. We currently going to pay 15% of GDP. That is in real money. It's about 180 billion rand a year. It's the biggest expense currently on the budget. You know, we are in serious trouble. But Stefan, I think your approach is a good approach. How many minutes do I have left? You're supposed to warn me, you see. So colleagues, let me just take you one step back. You know, I'm long in this game. People don't impress me with their smart presentations, okay? I've been a general secretary for now almost 20 years. We believe in a researched approach. So the biggest study that we as South Africans done to get our country to move forward was when the National Planning Commission, remember it was chaired by Trevor Manuel, and the deputy chairperson was Cyril Ramaphosa, and we selected about 35 of the top academics in South Africa. So they concluded what is today known as the National Development Plan. You agree with me? Okay? And they set 2 targets. The first target that they set was that South Africa has to create, by 2030, 11 million additional jobs. And we must ensure that our economy grows at least on average by 5.4% per year until 2030. Now, you know, if you open up the Business Day or the Cape Times or the Argus, you will read, we're not even achieving 1%. And so those are the kinds of things that I think is important to note. Now, one thing and one mistake that the National Planning Commission made, they set the targets, they look at the sectors, but there was one thing that they made a mistake. South Africa doesn't have an employment policy. And you would say to me, how is it possible that all those academics and leaders could have missed such an obvious thing? Because you need an employment policy. So Fiducia wrote a letter, and we issued a statement last week to NEDLAC to say that we want the country to ratify Convention 122 of the International Labour Organization. And this initiative that Stefan came up with, bringing the sectors together. So Stefan have identified 4 sectors. The one sector, we just saw the presentation of ICT. The second sector is media. The third sector is wholesale and retail. And the fourth sector is security. That they have identified those sectors as being labor absorption in terms of the numbers of jobs that could be created. I want to maybe add from my side, Stefan, there's 2 other sectors that can be added. The one sector is agriculture, because agriculture is labor intensive. Number 2 is tourism. Remember, tourism is a powerful sector, because for a person living in America, coming to South Africa, it is like cheap. You know, you pay very little for the flight, the accommodation, that people can drink whiskey here, like we drink beer. So tourism sector is a sector that we must, but we must also make sure that we bring black people into the economy. Okay, so there's a combination of many things that has to happen, but this initiative is a very, very important initiative. And I want to congratulate all of you that have made a commitment today to say, look, my company wants to be involved. I want to serve on a task team. This is what I can contribute. So colleagues, to break that number of 11 million jobs by 2030, how many years do we have left? Let me see if some of you done some maths and science at school. We only have 12 years left, because next year is 2018. 230 minus 2018 is 12. It's like a straightforward answer. Now, we will need to create 600,000 jobs per year. If we break it down per quarter, then you can see we have to create 150,000 jobs per quarter. That is a very difficult task to do. But that is what the target is there. We hope from our side that you will make your contribution. You will work together with us. But there's some other concluding items that I want to just add in conclusion. What is the strength of our country? One of the important strengths that we have is we have strong institutions and we have a robust legal framework. Okay, don't add the National Prosecuting Authority in that one. Okay, just keep him one side, because we've got some young man from KwaZulu-Natal, they call him Sean the Sheep. He doesn't know how to prosecute. He sits there, he looks very intelligent. You know, people steal, like Punang was saying, but he doesn't know how to prosecute. Okay? But the Constitutional Court in that area is very, very powerful. Okay? The other thing is that we have uncertainties. We have a volatile and uncertain leadership in this country. Why do I say that? You know, it was so easy for South Africa to decide who's going to be the next president. If it was only for the ANC to be smart. If the ANC just made a statement to say the next president, the deputy president will become the next president, then the markets would have cooled down, because they now already know Cyril Ramaphosa. But now we must decide about 7 other people. So we don't know whether they want to nationalize the mines, want to nationalize the banks. I mean, my members, the people of the public sector, invested more than 100 billion rand in Eskom alone. You know how many shares do we have in the banks? I don't understand where these people come on with their straightforward economic things. So what are you going to nationalize? Are you going to pay the people the compensation or not? So be careful, colleagues, for these people that call them so-called political leaders. They are looters. They want to confuse the people, they want to confuse the rural people, and they want to confuse the poor. The only way to come out of poverty is through the support of civil society like you sitting here, because you are maintaining and providing social security for about 14 million people. It's from your taxes that we are able to pay an old person a monthly old age pension of 1,500 rand. Isn't it so? You don't agree with me? It's from your money. Where did the government come with the bag of money to the union buildings? It's the money that they take from your taxes every month, and we pay the money over to them. So, colleagues, as I was saying to you, the next thing is that we traveled to New York, to Washington, and to Boston to talk to rating agencies and to talk to investors. Remember, we need to find 150 billion rand last year to fund the deficit that we have. So these people want to ask you questions. They want to know, is their money safe? They want to know about foreign policy. They want to know about investment policy. And we also had an investment conference in New York on a separate occasion, because investment is important for job creation. We went with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange to New York, and we managed to secure all the funding that we needed for last year. This year, it's going to be very difficult. Last week, the rating agency Standard & Poor downgraded South Africa to junk. Now remember, it's not only our foreign debt that was downgraded, it is also local debt. The second thing is this, Moody's. Moody's likes South Africa a lot. So they decided not to downgrade us now. But what they decided to do was to put us on review with a view to downgrade us in February next year. They only wait for the budget speech. If Minister Gigaba come, I don't wear suits. You can't come there with a nice suit, and look trendy. You can't fool investors with that stories. Relax. The people want to see evidence. Okay, now, on the one side, the president wants to impress the youth. Say, no, don't worry, fees must fall, we give you free education. There's no free education. Somebody must pay. If I give you something for free, that person there must pay for it. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Economics is not complex. People make it complex. So where are we going to get 40 billion rand for that promise? Right? Secondly, we also need to be very careful, because we've appointed, Ashraf, you must invite him to Spotlight. It is the Tomoyani. You know Tomoyani? He was the guy that looked after the criminals. Did you know? He was the Director General for the Correctional Services. From there, we took him and we placed him in charge of SARS. The first thing they did was to fire all the people that was chasing you up to pay your tax. Then it was KPMG report. You remember the report? Afterwards, they withdrew the report. But the damage was already done against the reputation of Pravin Gordhan, because they used that report to run his thing. That was the time when Sean the sheep, every week he sent Pravin a letter. You must come and answer this. You must come and tell us this. He's useless. The other people steal everything. He doesn't prosecute. Because they are captured. That is the reason. So, colleagues, look, I'm supposed to close. You remember my wife told me that I don't work. You know, she said, you must get a proper job. So I'm thinking, doesn't this woman know, you can't just talk, You must talk sense. So, colleagues, from our side, this commitment that Stefan made and you to create 100,000 jobs is a very novel concept. And the reason why I'm saying that, because for every job that we create, we are also at the same time creating an additional taxpayer. Because the person pay as you earn, and when he spends his money, whether he buys wine or cigarettes or whatever, he pays 14% of that money. Let's just hope Mr. Tomoyani is going to do his job. Because when CR17 is going to win the election, I don't think his job is going to be safe. Thank you very much.
Right, some applause rather for the unemployed Dennis George. So there we are. So now we know unionists clearly don't work, right? I'm not going to repeat any of the things you've said. I think it's available. As they say, the revolution has been tweeted, so you will find and amplify all the things that you've said. Dennis, thanks for your time and some important thoughts made there. We're going to have a quick chat just now. Let me just draw your attention to a video. Then we'll have a quick 10-minute chat here, and then we're going to round up, yes. So what we're going to have now is maximum 10 or maximum 15 minutes. We'll have a quick chat with a few people on stage that I'll call up. Then we'll have the vote of thanks. And then we'll hopefully mingle around and strategize how we can network in a very informal surrounding. So if I can call up 4 people, Opa Impawaki, the CEO of MICT-SETA. Opa, if you can come up, please. Applause for Opa. Thank you. There, yeah. And the second person is Wiseman Dinwa from the board, who's a board member at Services SETA. Wiseman. And the third person is Andile Simpengani, the CEO for Wholesale and Retail SETA. Andile, thank you. And the fourth person is Nora Munyai, Learning and Development Executive at Imperial Logistics. Nora, thank you. Okay, clearly I don't have a seat at the table, so I'll stand here. Thank you. So we'll chat 10, 15 minutes maximum, right? Thanks for giving up your time, all 4 of you. Perhaps just a quick, and I'm going to push it because of time, just a quick, maybe 1 or 2 lines from all of you in terms of what's your big takeout so far? Perhaps I'll start with you, Nora, since you're furthest away. Go ahead.
For Imperial Logistics, I think this is a great intervention opportunity because on a yearly basis, we take about 600 unemployed learners, and we run various programs from taking care of our own in terms of providing bursaries to kids of parents of Imperial staff. And then we run learnerships, we run graduate programs, apprenticeship programs. So this is a good intervention where we can be able to better source what we need and also absorb, because now and then we find that there are challenges where we keep on providing unemployed people with the same kind of learnership instead of actually absorbing them in the system. So we understand that it's not possible to always absorb as much as we can, but having a platform like this will allow us to, after we've trained, we can have a database where they can sit, and as an industry, we can be able to share those with that scale.
Okay, let's put the same thing to Andile, just your thoughts in terms of what's the takeout for you?
Thanks, Ashraf. Maybe let me just start by correcting you to say I'm the Chief Officer Qualifications and Research, Wholesale and Retail SETA. We really, as a SETA, support this initiative, and especially along the fact that we are not just job creators, but we facilitate job creation through skills development. We believe on building and enhancing partnership and collaboration with our sector because the retail sector is the largest contributor towards employment and job creation. And we believe through our partnerships in terms of learnership, skills programs, and facilitation of career guidance, we could contribute quite meaningfully towards this initiative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's get to Wiseman.
Thanks for having me, and let me take this opportunity to say a very good morning to all of who is here. Firstly, we are very excited as Services SETA to have this opportunity to at least come closer to people who talk about what is at our hearts, coming from a skills development perspective. As Services SETA, we have already moved some miles on what is done here today. Just a few examples that I can allude to. One, we have a very important program which is called New Venture Creation. That New Venture Creation is moving and it has a full support from the stakeholders out there. So it has moved to an extent that Services SETA has decided to build an entrepreneurship academy or institute, which will be built in Midrand very soon. That academy is the first of its kind. The intention is to try and bring all the SMEs and other businesses to come and talk about how do we move forward in terms of creating jobs, because we have identified the SMEs as the main creators of jobs, if I can say so. And more than that, we have already built a National Artisan Development Academy. It's in Bloemfontein, just next to N1 as you join N6. The fact that it's in Bloemfontein doesn't exclude any person. It's a national academy, is for the whole Republic of South Africa. We have invested to a tune of 320 million for that academy. The last time I checked, it was 94% complete. We have also built 15 skills development centers across the country. The skills development centers are built in those areas that most of us wouldn't like to go, especially the rural areas, where young or youth are trained in different trades in the rural areas, different trades that are in line with their local economies. We have built in areas like Mkhanyakude in the KZN, Nqeleni, Cala, and so forth. We are also giving, that is our mandate, to give learnerships, internships.
Okay, can we just hold it there? I may just ask you another question just now, right? Thank you for that. Opa, just your thoughts again on the big takeout from today.
Yeah, good morning and thank you, Ashraf. It's always really heartwarming to see stakeholders getting together and get to talk about employment and youth unemployment. And at least for the first time this morning, I could hear that the emphasis is not on what SETAs are doing or not doing in terms of creating skills. Of course, employment has to do with a number of variables like we had this morning. What is it that we need to do working together to make sure that young people are taken off the streets and access employment? It's not only about skills, it's not only about the degrees and certificates they get at varsity, but it has to do with quite a number of things. So I'm really encouraged this morning to see stakeholders coming together, having a conversation not only for this morning, but I also learned that this is ongoing. Somebody mentioned that there's a company that has started this initiative, probably 2 or 3 of them, that I've been part of. And of course, we're not making a very good dent in terms of addressing unemployment amongst young people. And of course, it should be a concern for all of us if we are caught in this situation. So I'm very, very encouraged and pleased to be part of this initiative. And like Stefan said earlier on, it's time really to stop talking a lot, but to get our hands or roll our sleeves and get our hands dirty, so that at some point we are able to talk about numbers. When you come here next time around, we should be able to show numbers that based on this initiative that started in 2017, what is the situation like 12 months down the line? So thank you very much.
Okay, perfect. What I think, I'm going to move on very quickly. I think so companies that employ and look for skilled people and employ them, I think that's a given, and they should do that. What about addressing the unskilled? You know, we talk about, like, in education, they talk about the missing middle and the unemployed, those who have no money to pay for the fees. So the equivalent of that in jobs are those who are unemployed and unskilled, right? Perhaps give me your thoughts on that. Like, what do you do with the unemployed, unskilled in our country?
So what we do, we make sure that there's actually a proper talent pipeline process where, depending on the level of the unskilled individual, it could be a learner, it could be a graduate, we ensure that when they come in, we provide them with the necessary skills. There must be a setup in terms of mentoring, coaching, because it doesn't really help that they come in and they're frustrated. And often, I think in organization, most of you will agree with me that that's often what happens. So we make sure that the setup assists them to be able to get the skill for that period of time. We understand that it's an investment. It's not an investment on money, it's an investment on time. And we have structures to assist us so that we can be able to ensure that we track that they're receiving the needed skill. We also get feedback from them to ensure that they're getting the needed skill. And over a period of time, that's when we also determine the possibility of absorption. And what excites me about this process is that at least where we're not able to absorb, there will be other opportunities out there where they can definitely be absorbed. I think the challenge that we need to realize is that it's not just about the people being employed, but it's also about the need they have to be able to take care of their families.
Absolutely.
So it's not just about the career, but it's also about taking care of our communities.
Okay. Any one of you, I'll pick out one, just anybody wants to comment on the same thing about dealing with the unskilled? Go ahead.
My comment will be to say, for instance, as WNR CETA, we have, from the discretionary grant funding, set aside allocation specifically for the unemployed. But this is aligned to the key growth strategies that we have identified in our sector skills planning in partnership with our sector. So this has allowed us on annual basis to have a specific number and specific allocation to say, let's focus on skills development in these priority areas for the sector. Over and above that, what we've identified as a huge gap is work experiential learning, where we need to prepare them for the industry. But what we continuously encourage in the sector is ensuring that they create a learning space within the workplace, and that could afford more opportunity to have skills interventions that are focusing into their key growth areas. So I think with these work readiness programs for the unemployed, as well as having specific learnerships and skills programs that are addressing a certain target of unemployed youth. Lastly, one of the areas that we've identified in this sector is a growth in the medium and small business sectors of the wholesale and retail sector, where we believe there could be a more increase in numbers, but that would require more attention to what we regard as critical skills or soft skills, so to speak, where we would look into the areas of coaching and mentoring within the workplace, and also your basic management, administrative skills, talking to retail operations for the unemployed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wiseman, perhaps help us with this here. Jobs are needed, and we've spoken about it at length. But you also have companies, and I know you may be from a CETA, but there are companies that can only employ so much because they need to be profitable, right? How do they get the balance right between unions and people like us saying, give them jobs, and then companies who have a shrinking bottom line already. Surely they can't trade to a point of view that they're losing out. How do they get that balance right?
While my colleague, Mr. Andile Spengane, has covered me, what I can say is that as services SETA, we are of the view that the only challenge that we are facing now as the country or as the skills development fraternity is the shortage of workplaces for experiential learning of these youths. So we are appealing to all workplaces in South Africa to come on board and assist open up their workplaces for these young people. But at the same time, we also believe that in South Africa, every place is a workplace, be it a church, be it a trade union, be it a factory, be it a school. There are so many things that you can do. For example, we have just identified that in the townships, in the schools, the facilities there, especially the ablution facilities, are not that acceptable. So we have initiated a program where we are saying the communities should have training right there where they live. But what is more important also that I need to talk about in trying to address this issue of shortage of workplaces, we have partnered with a company called EOH. I think some of us know that company, where we have agreed that this company will train 100,000 young people on different working interventions. So the job summit, I think, is more or less similar to what we are doing. That is why we are saying we do welcome partnership. We pledge for partnership with Job Summit.
And hopefully that's going to happen, yeah. Opa, you want
Yes.
to answer that yourself? About
Certainly. I've never believed for a moment that even if we train hundreds of young people, they will end up in employment if our economy is not growing. And one of the challenges we have is that particularly young African learners are not mobile. We need to get to a point where young people are educated quite well firstly, and then they acquire skills. And when they do that, they become mobile, so that they are not only relying in companies in South Africa for employment, but they could go elsewhere for employment. For that reason, that's why we need to get our basic education quite well. We need to get our graduates who are dropping out of varsity because they are indigent, and after dropping out of varsity, then they have to come to SETAs, for training and things like that. So we need to get things in a row. Education is very important. Young people have got to be encouraged to stay at school as long as possible to acquire education, and thereafter, perhaps through TVETs and the like, of course, those who finish matric and they don't want to do varsity and stuff like that, they could go to TVETs. But the other problem that we have, ladies and gentlemen, is that I still don't understand why our TVETs offer programs like marketing and HR and stuff like that when they should be concentrating on trades, like Ambach as we grew up, knowing those kind of things. Because you can imagine when you take a young person and you put them through TVETs and they do marketing. Already, universities of technologies have got those kind of, training and the rest. Now on completion of the training, the TVETs, these guys are right at the bottom in terms of preference when it comes to employers.
absolutely. Well, hopefully it's something that I think the Job Summit will take away, because you can't have this mismatch. I mean, many people say many of the people being trained right now are being trained for unemployment, maybe a complex issue. But we're going to wrap up now. Probably just each one of you, just maybe 30 seconds, if you can comment about, you're going to leave here just now, and you're going to go back to work. And what are you going to tell the people at work about the Job Summit?
From my side is an opportunity to have a platform where we can be able to grow skills for the unemployed, and move away from the situation that we find ourselves today. And not only just for the able-bodied, but for the disabled as well. Run projects that can be able to assist them.
Okay, thank you. Next.
The most important thing is to ensure that we get on implementation on a full scale. And one of that is going to ensure we enhance and build strong partnerships and collaboration with key role players in this assignment. And it's critical that we, in the process, continuously focus on what is in demand, what the industry requires. And through collaboration and partnership, we identify that. One of the crucial things that is needed in this process of identification of skill sets that are in demand is sitting around the table with organized labor industry, as well as the key role players like the SETA, in terms of crafting the appropriate required qualification to be aligned to what is in demand. But the success is on collaboration and partnership, and set aside specific targets and budget. And the time is now. It's not something that has to be done somewhere in the new year or what. Let's work with what we have. We do have resources, but it's only need a collaborative effort and be specific to what we need. Lastly, a focus on small and medium enterprises with entrepreneurship development or programs that cut across our learning interventions. Because we don't just have to create people that are to be employed, but let's create people that are going to be employable in the form of them creating jobs as well in the whole process.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good point. Yeah. Go ahead, Wiseman.
From me, working together and getting our hands dirty, I think is the key to take the process forward. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Opa?
Yeah, thanks so much. We always battle as a SETA to get young people to have workplace experiential training as they do learnerships. So what I'll be taking back home after this session is to say, perhaps from the MICT SETA point of view, would like to get a list of companies that make a commitment to give employment opportunities to young people, so that as we embark on learnerships and internships, we could assist those companies that are sort of leading these projects to talk to you guys as host employers in trying to give these young people opportunities to work.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And I think that commitment may come up in the following weeks as a follow-up. To the panel, thank you for your time. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you indeed. Okay, we're almost done. Vote of thanks. I think it's best if Stefan and his colleagues do just that. And then we're going to wrap up thereafter. Stefan, if I can call you up, please. Just a quick one about the pledges. That little blue thing that was waved earlier.
Okay. On your table, Joel, can you just show us the blue card? And it says, I'm part of the solution. In other words, it's in your hand to make a difference in terms of unemployment. Please, there's different options where you can mark how you like to get involved. The most important thing is just stay in touch. Let's work together. Be part of the industry task teams who come up with different programs. So my colleagues, if you can just still go one more time around. If somebody hasn't completed those forms, please complete them and my colleagues will collect them. I'd like to say thank you. And I start with the beginning. And the beginning is Dennis George, okay? When we came up with that idea, he was the first person I consulted. And through all the period, he has been there supporting me and guiding me. When I needed advice, he was always there. I'd like to thank Bonang, he's no longer here. It was 25 years ago exactly that I met first time Bonang in Orange Farm. I was part of a community project, and our very first donor was Bonang. So he has been in my journey for a long time, as you can see. Important is all along, both for Dennis and Bonang, has been their moral support. I think there's many times where we have wondered, is this really going to work? There's often when you find resistance, and they always have given me moral support. There's another guy, Rob Collins, who is from Sun International, his colleague Vera and Avesh, from Sun International. They have given their premises for the last year in their head office. Today, again, they have been staunch supporters. So a great thank you to them also. Pule from Black Business Council, Pule Mokwena. I've been knowing him for a very long time also and has been a steady supporter. And last but not least, the Deputy Presidency. If it wasn't for them, I'm not joking, we wouldn't be here today. We met them about 6 weeks ago or something, not very long, and I said, please, please, do something in 2017. To be frank, I was shit scared, okay? In 6 weeks, pulling that thing off looked a little bit like a stretch. So I would say it's due to the sense of your urgency, especially Lawrence, your colleague, has been pushing us hard. So thanks to you a lot. And it shows that government actually gets stuff done, okay? Now I want to thank my team. Can I just invite my team to come up here so I can show you who they are, okay? Joel, and while Joel comes, I start talking. Fariba, Akashni, Candice, Simon, Reggie. And I'll just give you a quick thank you. Joel basically has been holding the fort at Ifundi. A lot of our time has been invested this year with the Job Summit, and Joel has been keeping the organization going. So thanks to you. Thank you to Fariba. Fariba really came up with the whole concept of the Ubuntu initiative. I think it's 5 years ago. So massive thank you to you. Candice, many of you have been harassed by her. Maybe you enjoyed it, maybe not, okay? But she has been driving all of you to come to those meetings and drive the process forward. Likewise, Akashni has been pushing people, has applied her charm and persistence to get the momentum going. Reggie and Simon are our communication specialists. They have been sending out the emails, they have been on the phone with you. They have rallied all of us here today. So thank you to the whole team. Thank you also to Chamano. I think we had a fantastic media coverage. As you probably know, the whole event this morning, 2 hours, was on ETV. We have had lots of interviews the last few days. It's still continuing today. It is thanks to Chamano who has made that all happen. My colleague Tiro, who has put the videos together within very tight time frames, and Desiree, who has orchestrated that. I can't see Desiree here. She's probably out there somewhere, but a great thank you to her. And last and not least, a great thank you to the Coalition of the Willing. What does that mean? As I said, over 200 companies have been part of the process, and within those companies, multiple people. And it's very simple. The people who participated, I would simply say, differentiate themselves from the other people through a big heart. Okay? A big heart in the sense that you took time out of your day-to-day daily schedule, and after your call of duty, you were there. And lastly, I forgot another colleague of mine who's standing there in the corner, Roald, who basically organized the whole logistics and the venue where we're here today. So again, great thank you to you for coming. Great thank you, more important than coming, is what you have put in last year already. There's a lot of time that a lot of people have invested. And I want to take much more of your time in the year to come, because we have great work to do. So thank you to you, thank you to our team, and all those who have been supporting me when the going was tough. Thank you.
There we are, okay. Let's make some serious noise for them. Thank you so much. Eh? Thank you. All right, so we're going to wrap up and we'll get you next to me. That's fine. I think, they always say, put the most important item for the week, the first thing on the agenda on Monday. And whether it was by choice or design or whatever, many of you, well, your physical presence tells me that you've put this as your most important item of the week, and that is particularly telling. That's point one. Point two, some of the panelists spoke about getting people jobs and employable, but you also need to be in a situation that's not just getting jobs what's right for them, but also what's right for the country, because you need to get jobs that will make South Africa productive. so that we can be higher up on the productivity ladder of the world so that we can create more jobs. That's just something important to take away. That point that I've said often, champion people build champion nations, you need to take it back and say, are you that champion person? And if you're not, what are you going to do to get there, right? People tweeting, check it out even now, #Job Summit. I asked you to take some pictures. I thought I'll rattle off the names of people who did. I'll tell you what, it'll take me another half an hour because you guys have been fantastic. That we are here, which has been wonderful. I personally will retweet. I've done many. I'll retweet many of them in the course of the morning as well. So thank you for that. Those that have also quoted some of the guests, what you've done is inadvertently you've amplified a message beyond the four walls. And that's really important. Because the message can't just be for the people that are here. And you've done that, and that's fantastic, right? All that it leaves me to say is that you made the right decision, so let's support every one of you for making the right choice by being here. That's one. I certainly did make the right... Yeah, we're going to get to them. I've certainly made the right choice as well by being here, and I'm grateful, Stefan, that I chose to be here rather than somewhere else. And as far as what that summit finally means to all of us, we can talk and debate the whole day and be very academic about all of that. Ultimately, it goes back to that point that we said earlier on. There's a massive number of unemployed people. We South Africans, we need to create jobs, and the responsibility of all of that ultimately resides with I and Jay, and you need to think about that. As far as the music is concerned, the Orbit Jazz Club will entertain us even now, so hands to them in advance, support. And although we're done with the formalities, I think there's lots of opportunities to talk right now. And I've always had this thing when my children, from the time they were in school, if they've met people or people have come up and said something that's really impressive, don't just come back and say that's nice. So people like Stefan and company have done great stuff. Make the effort even now of joining the queue and shaking their hand and telling them well done. I'd like to think that's exactly what you're going to do. Thank you for being here.